She serves on the steering committee of the National Network of Pediatric MS Centers. Mary serves as the president of the Women's Professional Staff Association of the Cleveland Clinic from 2018-2019. Mary holds a BS in biology from the Gaiman University in Erie, Pennsylvania, and received her MD from the Medical College of Ohio. She did her internship, residency, and neuroimmunology fellowship at the Cleveland Clinic and had served as chief resident in neurology there. Dr. Rensel serves as a board member of the Ohio chapter of the National MS Society since 2019. She is a best doctor of Cleveland Clinic since 2010 per the Cleveland Magazine. She is active as a coach, mentor, scientific reviewer, clinical researcher, activity director, entrepreneur, and national speaker. She also has appeared on numerous media outlets, including a spot on Good Morning America. She lives in Cleveland with her husband, Bob. They have 4 children, 3 are young adults, and 1 is still in high school, enjoying basketball and lacrosse seasons. In her free time, Mary loves being into nature, hiking and gardening, and when it is cold in Ohio, you can find her inside painting. Please help me welcome Dr. Rensel.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Good to see everyone. I don't have COVID up here. You guys could come look close. I'll yell. I'm a mom of 4. I can yell, so don't worry. Okay, so here are my financial disclosures. And what are we going to do? So I get you after lunch, so I have to, kind of keep you awake somehow. So this is what we're going to do. It's not hard. There's no data hardly. It's just like we're just going to talk about us as humans. So this is a bit of a different take on things. You've heard like amazing cutting edge information on neurology all morning. So we're going to take a little bit of different path right now. So we're going to look at how high functioning neurologic healthcare workers can build a professional well-being plan. So why should we leave that to chance? We're not going to after today, right? We're going to get this down. We're going to understand the concepts of value-based, personal and professional development. And we're going to walk you through that. What does that mean? And then what we know about our neurobiologic needs, how can we marry that with our professional plan, our professional well-being plan? And, let's start with those days that we all have. And you say, what am I doing here? You're in this situation with a really tough patient, and you're wondering, why aren't I a tech worker that's working from my couch and have my Starbucks? And so I think of this day. I was a resident. I had the chance to meet some really wonderful med students and residents today. And I was a resident, and I was doing an NICU rotation, and I was at the bedside of this young woman who had abused various drugs, including inhalants. And on her MRI, she had, her basal ganglion was just like a cavity, So it was, and her mom was at her bedside, and she was coding multiple times all night, and her brother had already died of this addiction. And I'm like, why am I here? Why am I here? Why do I have to look at this mother's face, and why, so we all have those days, right? And I don't have the answer. I didn't have the answer then, but thank goodness, I feel like, there's been people in business and military, et cetera, and have talked about, if we know our neurobiologic needs to belong, and we know our neurobiologic reason of our why, we can answer this question. So that's today, my goal for you is that you're going to be able to answer this question. So how are we all doing? So we have kind of 3 sections in this room today, and this is from a well-being index that Mayo has designed, and there's 9 quick questions, and 180,000 healthcare workers around the globe have answered these same 9 questions for the last so many years. And it turns out that over a third of us, so this section of the room, or this section of the room, or this section, and high level of emotional distress, healthcare workers. So these are all healthcare workers globally. This is very concerning. So we think like, how big is your team at home? How big is your center that you work in? How big is your department? So over a third of them may be at this point where they're just like emotionally, it's just been really challenging time, as we all know, for so many reasons. I mean, when I'm talking about that case of that young woman, that she did not pass away that night, and I honestly don't remember and I remember that night. That was a long time ago. So there's always been challenges in healthcare, and my only ask of us all is that we know why we're here, because generally that helps us develop our professional well-being plan. So we have heard about so many things that are going well in neurology. I'm wondering if anyone wants to share one. I'll start. So I'm a neuroimmunologist. I work at the Mellon Center Cleveland Clinic. I've been there for 30 years. And I trained there, that's why it's 30 years, because I know it's shocking that I've been there 30 years. But I think, okay, treating MS for 30 years, I used to have to use steroids all the time because we were always getting calls all the time. They're relapsing, they're having another relapse, another relapse. I got there, it was a great time for MS then because there was 3 medicines to use. We were so excited. We had something to give our patients. It was like a birthday party every day at the MS clinic because we actually could give people a preventative treatment and talk to them about their options, because there were options. So I got there after there was one medicine that everyone had to go into a lottery to get, right? And so then by the time I got there was 3 or 4 medicines. It was super exciting. So I would say what's going well in my little sphere of neurology land is that my patients forget to come to their appointments because they feel so well. They forget they have MS. So I was seeing a patient the other day, she started crying when we started talking about her MS, and I said, what's wrong? She said, I don't really think about MS. I forget I have it. And just, coming in and talking to you, and I forget I have this risk of this thing, because, we're kind of going over questions, and she was very upset, just thinking about what could be, but none of it was happening. She was doing great. She was working full time, she had a family, she was fine. She had no limitations from her MS. So I would say that's what's going well in my area of neurology. Does anyone want to share anything going well in their area of neurology? Because that's pretty huge, for me, at least my perspective. Anyone? Yes?
I mean, we have great advances. We have more answers to the patients.
Right. Great advances, more answers for patients.
And for those who have passion for the practice, it's very rewarding.
Yes. So if you have passion for it, it's very rewarding, as she had said. Thank you. Anyone else want to share what's going on in your little world of neurology? Sarah.
Well, in stroke, we used to only have one medication for stroke. And
Yes.
now we have a really old cardiology drug that we're repurposing for stroke, and it works great.
Right.
It's faster, easier to give. Everybody loves it.
Right, so more treatments for stroke. I'll tell you, I'm old enough that when we would admit a stroke, we would just put them on heparin. That's all we did. Honestly, sorry guys, but that's all we had at that time. So really good stuff, right? Really good stuff going on. So a lot is going well, and how do we balance, we have so many more options. We have so much more to offer the patients and their families. With that news, a lot of us are emotionally distressed. I mean, just how do we make sense of these two worlds? So I'm the kind, if I have a little extra time, I love to jump into research, and I would love to read, some legal research and some business research, and what are the military doing? So during the middle of COVID, if I had any time, I was diving into other data, what are people doing for resiliency or professional well-being? Because in medicine, I know the data in medicine, but yet I also know that we have a lot to offer the patients. So I kept looking around and who has the answer? Well, I'm just going to challenge us to say that maybe nature had the answer all along, and we can look at what nature does, because I've looked under other rocks, and I don't have all the answers beyond. I think what nature has shown us is really important to balance. It's really important to bloom and grow, and it's really important to find a system that you can flourish in, right? Because otherwise you're not going to keep going, right? So we get into some natural patterns of things. There's something called the golden ratio. Now, I'm really not a math person, but I'm going to try it for a minute to be one. So this image here is from the Greek letter phi, and so the golden ratio, we see it in nature. So if you see these little squares, you see the one in the really small little sphere in the center of that, you see the 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 3 is 5, and then there's this natural sphere that comes out of that pattern. And so this pattern is pleasing to the eye. When you look at that sphere, it just looks balanced. It looks probably right to you, like something's okay with that. But that's a natural pattern of this. And it is, we see it in architecture, art, geometry. We see it in many things. We actually see it in nature. So we see it in the sunflowers and how the seeds are arranged in the sunflowers, and even how the petals are angled. So these petals all have a certain angle to them at this 0.6 ratio, or this 1.6 ratio that goes back to that Fibonacci sequence that we talked about, this golden ratio. It's 1.6 of each number. And the reason that this flower does that is for optimal light and optimal water, and to live and to flourish, right? And so that it can perpetuate life. And so there's a reason it does every single thing, and it's practiced, and this is its system right now. So again, if you want to look at this a little closer, we start with the 1, and you add the 1 and 2, and each one is 1.6 of the other. And so, you know, when we talk about our professional development, the experts suggest that we should start with our why. So we have to start with our central reason for coming to work each day, for getting out of bed. And that is, if we're thinking about this nice little sphere that nature has shown us is pleasing to the eye, and it's a pattern. If you want some more details on how to jump into this, Finding Your Why, this is a great book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And at the end, I have a slide with a lot of resources, so you can take a picture of it at the end, or I'm glad to email it to you if you want to email me at the end. So don't worry about writing anything down. But anyway, so Simon Sinek, he's a business guy. He started a business. He hit rock bottom because his business did poorly, and he was kind of bored with his business. And so then he figured out that, you know, I have to start from the inside out. You know, why am I in business? And so he goes around and gives talks globally, and guess what his fee is to give a talk? Now, because he talks about this. Does anyone want to guess? Is it 10,000? Who thinks it's higher than 10,000? Yes, only 9. Who thinks it's higher than 50,000? Yes, you're so right. Do you think it's higher than 100,000? It's 150, yeah. So this gentleman is following this natural pattern and going around the globe and sharing this message. So at least read his book. It's $10 or something, so it's worth it. But we all have an agenda for today, and so if you want to turn it over and write a few notes, you know, when we're out at a meeting, this is a good time to just jot a few notes of what comes to mind. If you were going to answer these questions, what got you out of bed today? Who are you? If someone's like, well, who are you really? What's really important to you? What do you believe in? Why do you do this? You work long hours, you're helping a lot of people. It's not always pleasant, but you know you're doing the right thing. So why do you do these things? What's important to you? What is your purpose? Why do you exist? Do any words come to mind? I'm thinking, you know, I looked under different literature, and I think the best explanation is to go back to nature, because why don't we embody this natural pattern that we know why we do everything, that we start with this golden circle, and this is Simon's big discovery. Now he gets paid $150,000 to go around the globe. So he says most of us start with our what? What are you? I'm a neurologist, I've met nurses, I've met med students and residents. That's what you are. And then how do you do it each day? Well, you show up, you learn, you treat, maybe you do surgery, you're in the OR doing monitoring, how are you that? You all do you have your own how, but what you are is a PA, a nurse, a doc. But maybe when we start, we should think about why. Why do we do this? Because it will make it more clear of our how and our what. So especially if you're not sure of your next how and what, we start with our why. So why do we do something? I mean, I really love new ideas. I know that if I'm in medicine, I always will have new ideas. I mean, not myself personally, but I need to learn about things because I'm never done learning in medicine. That's really important to me. It's really important to me is connecting people to resources, so I can do that in medicine all day long. That feels really great to me. So, again, if we went back to nature, this is a natural spiral here, this has a ratio, there's an intention to everything nature does. So if we say, okay, everything I'm doing, I'm gonna make sure it meets with my why. So if it's learning, connecting, so you might wanna write down a word that comes to mind for you, like what do you think your why is? And then everything should be connected to your why. So if someone says, hey, you wanna be in that committee? You say, okay, will I learn something? Will I meet someone new? This is what I'll say. Will I learn something? Will I meet someone new? Can I help my patients and their families? Then yeah, sure, yep, I'll be on that committee. If it's, hey, do you want to be on this board? But it's like, you know, I treat MS, so if it's not related to MS, it's not, then I think, well, it doesn't really meet my why. So no thank you, but I would suggest this person for this, because it doesn't meet my why. It just makes life a little easier to say yes or no to things if you know your why. So when it's always connected to what you do and how you do it. So, you know, Simon Sinek talks about starting in the middle. Again, if I had to say my why, like this image helps me think about my why, because I think neuroscience, I could never know everything about it, right? So I feel like it's kind of that mountain in the distance. I'm always learning about different neuroscience pathways, different mechanisms, new medications, new ways to help our patients. But I also like this image because there's flowers in the center, and it shows that I'm the one, I want to enjoy the journey. I want to enjoy today. I mean, I've had a lot of fun meeting a lot of new faces. So I like water, and I like the reflection in this image. So it reminds me, you know, take time to reflect, enjoy the journey, and then keep going toward my why. That's why this image helps me with my why. And I would say those are my why. Like, I like to be curious. Anyone knows me, I'm generally asking questions. I want to understand things. I want to understand why we're doing this with a patient, or why is this process this way, or why is this system in place. So that's what I want to get to, why, because that's what's really important to me. I personally really love efficiency. I don't like to waste time, so if something is not important to me, I don't want to give my time or energy toward that, because we know we all have finite resources. I mean, our lecturers today reminded us about brain reserve. We have finite resources, so we need to put it where it's what's really important to us, our why. So if we had to put it into buckets, you know, how can we live our whys? So we have to make sure that we're giving ourselves time to grow, to balance, to flourish for the long run. And then generally we know our what. That's really easy. If someone says, what are you? I'm a mom, I'm an aunt, I'm a sister, I'm a neuroimmunologist, you know, I'm a researcher. That's what I am, but that really doesn't tell you a lot about what's really important to me. You might guess it. You might infer that by what I give my time to. So if we had to say, okay, how do we balance in this system when we know healthcare workers, or 37% of them, are very emotionally distressed? Well, back to the message we got earlier today about brain reserve. So I'd like to talk about brain cybersecurity. I think, like, what have you done for your phone and your laptop today? Have you done anything similar for your brain? Have you prioritized your brain because it makes you you, it gives you your great ideas, it's the essence of you. And we've all, unfortunately, seen those cases where somebody is different because something happened to their brain. So we, number one, in my opinion, need to make brain cybersecurity our #1 goal of our activities of our day. So what have we done to make sure our brain is safe and healthy and well cared for? I'm also a softie for soft animals, so I put puppies on here. So, you know, we know that, you know, you also could think about it, if you're not so much like a phone or a laptop kind of person, you could say, hey, I'm way more of a puppy person or a kitten person. You could think of it like if you had a little puppy, or you have a new baby at home who's only 6 months old. You might say, what do you do for them? I mean, you don't leave it for chance, right? So you make sure they're well fed, they're well rested, they, you know, if it's a puppy, they have time to play. You know, you would give it a well-rounded program, right? And that's what I would hope of your brain cybersecurity. Like, you guys are neurologic healthcare workers. We need you out there. We need you feeling well and being optimally functional and productive and actually enjoying your work. Because if you're enjoying your work, you know, we're more likely to keep coming back. So we have to know why, right? So #1, I hope that you sketch out a little something that you can do for your brain this week, or even just today. Sometimes you just focus on today. Did you drink water? Did you have a good meal? The meal was delicious and healthy. Did you connect with someone? Did you look someone in the eye and talk to someone today? Because that is a great brain skill, and it helps our brains. We feel better when we connect, rather than just texting people. So we can challenge ourselves to kind of raise our level of brain cybersecurity. If you notice, your phone doesn't work very well if you don't plug it in all night, your laptop is overheated, you don't just throw your laptop on your front lawn and hope it's there for you in the morning. We take care of things that we value. So we just need to escalate, maybe some of us have some opportunities to really put it at the top priority. And then neurologists are allowed to have fun. I know there's a rule somewhere that someone thought there was like no fun in neurology, but I agree with the comments. Like, we are allowed to enjoy our work. We are allowed to enjoy our colleagues and have fun at work. We're allowed even to have fun in our medical visits if it's appropriate. I mean, obviously, if we're talking about a very serious topic with our patients, we wouldn't be joking around. But we are allowed to connect and enjoy our time. I really value the time I have with my patients and their families. I feel like that's just an honor that they're so honest with me. You meet a stranger and they tell you all of their symptoms they've had, or their life's wishes. It's really an honor, and so I want to enjoy that. I want to be able to enjoy that connection, but don't leave that to chance. And fun doesn't have to be at work. Hopefully this is fun outside of work, so that you have something outside of work. If that's hard for you, if you've worked really hard, you don't have a lot of fun scheduled in, sometimes you can volunteer, because that might also be fun, and then you get social rewards as well. And then we have to remember that most of our day we're highly sympathetic focused, we're task oriented, and we have to balance, we have to toggle a little bit back and forth between relaxation and hard work. So just make sure you infuse that throughout your day. Pets do that, so if you're working from home and you have a little furry animal, that helps. Cute babies do that. Pictures of people we love do that. So make sure in your office you have something that helps you toggle between focus and task orientation and relaxation. Or if you have time to get outside and just, even if it's 5-10 minutes, it's supposed to be three times a day is what they recommend. But I know that's hard when you're in medicine, but whatever you can do, even if you just go by a window, walk and take a stroll by a big window, just get some cues from nature, that will help relax us a little bit. So how do we keep life interesting as a neurologist? How do we feel like we keep learning? Well, we've heard a lot of examples today with advocacy is one thing. The good thing is, when we're younger, then we're usually getting degrees. So we get the high school, the college, the med school, the residence, and then, maybe fellowship. So we're used to degrees, and those are our kind of, all right, we did it. It was like checkbox, that's our reward. But when you're done, then it's like, well, what do you celebrate then? Like, how do you get a reward anymore? So there's some literature on work feeling psychologically rewarding. How do you perpetuate that feeling that work is psychologically rewarding? Well, the nice thing is, a lot of times, it's when you marry things to the values, to your own values. So what's important to you? So I've shared some with what's important to me. I really love, I have a high bar for, being intellectually curious. I like things to be at high level. I don't like sloppy work, So there's some things really important to me. I want to serve others. I want to help our patients and their families. So if I work on something that has one of my values, I'm way more likely to work on it, and I feel better about it. So it feels better inside. And one thing we have to know about Simon Sinek and his getting $150,000 to come talk to people, he talks a lot about neuroscience. He talks a lot about the limbic system, how the limbic system is a nonverbal part of our brain. And when we say, hey, that just feels good, or this project I'm so proud of, and it's hard to put it into words why you're so proud of that project, or you have this encounter with a patient and you're not sure why it just meant so much, it just meant so much to you. It could be that we connected, in a limbic system way, that's a nonverbal way, we felt really a deep connection. And usually it's because we share values. So if you're on a project and you're thinking, I don't know if this one's for me, you might want to delve and question yourself, like, what's the value of this project? And what are the values of my employer? Do they meet with my values? Because otherwise, when things feel aligned, they feel really good. And it's a nonverbal feeling. A lot of times we say it's our gut, or we say it's our heart, but you know, we've been through anatomy and physiology, and it's not our gut and it's not our heart. It's the limbic system that's nonverbal, and it just feels right, and we can't really put words to it. An example he gives is your life partner. You might say, oh, I really love my life partner because they make me laugh, or they get me, or they're there for me, but you know, other people make me laugh, and other people get me, and other people are there for me. So why is this person so important to me? Why is my life partner so important? It's hard to get those words. So certain things that are our core being, that are really important to us, sometimes we can't put it into words. So that's where you go back to your values and say, you know, am I aligned with this project, or am I aligned with this? Because those are the things that are line in the sand. These are our most important things. And if you're not sure how to find your values, I'm glad to share like those quick worksheets you can do, like just to put it into words. Because sometimes you just know that what's important to you because of that nonverbal limbic area. So if you're frustrated and you're feeling like, I don't know, I'm just not feeling like this is rewarding, you might want to go back to your values, because if you are working on projects that speak to your values, it feels great. Okay, the other thing is, as we know neuroscience-wise, the more actions we take, the more long-term potentiation, the more confident we will feel. So there's always that first step, you know, to get out of your comfort zone and just do a little something that's new, not too much so you feel safe, because again, you're not going to feel safe because you haven't really, you know, worked those neural pathways yet. So this is always the hard thing. You know, it's going to take a little extra energy, it's going to take some brain power. The other thing, there's a wonderful neuroscientist from Harvard, and I have her TED Talk in the list, so I'll share it with you later. But she talks a lot about brain-body balance, so that if you are a learner, if you're one of the residents or the med students, you're learning all day long, that means you have to actually care for yourself even more. Like, you have to neurometabolically support yourself with healthy nutrition, rest, connections, fun. Like, all those things are important, especially if you're learning all day long. And even as staff neurologists, you know, we're always learning. We're always learning something new. So we actually, you know, that wellness is important for us. We have to have a balance. So, you know, I kind of think of the brain like a busy parent. It's already doing a lot of things, right? It's already managing our whole body. You know, it's self-preservation. So if we want to also learn, or we want to meet new people, come to a meeting and, you know, and be vulnerable and introduce yourself, that's going to take extra energy. So we have to always make sure that we're supporting ourselves. If you want to call it wellness or whatever you want to call it, we have to support ourselves when we're learners. And then the wonderful thing is, quote unquote, a lazy way to also build a well-being program is to hang out with people who are already doing really great things. So you can check that off your box today. You're hanging out with colleagues today. So if we hang out with people who have healthy behaviors, who are, you know, building programs, who are, you know, running residencies, you know, it's contagious, all that spirit and that energy. So that's one way. If you're not sure, if you're like, who are the healthy people? You know, like, so are they eating right? Do they seem like they enjoy life? Do they come with a positive energy? They don't have to be like happy, joyful all second every day, but are they hopeful? So if you find somebody in a positive emotional setting more hope than negative, hang out with those folks, because it's contagious. You'll capture that a little bit yourself. So these are ways to keep life interesting, is to make sure you know your own values and those that you hang out with. Take a step, take that scary step right out of your comfort zone once in a while, and then keep practicing it. And then you can, quote unquote, use the group synchrony route, where you can, you know, borrow some of the positive emotions of people that you hang out with. And then, okay, those of us that have been in the business a long time, there's people here who have been in the business, you know, longer than me for sure. You know, there's a great book by Carol Dweck called The Growth Mindset. And one of her favorite phrases is just, not yet. I'm not there yet. I'll tell a story. My husband's in the back, so I'm gonna laugh at this. But so during COVID, I was trying to learn line dancing. There are no videos. There are no videos of this. Because, I don't know, it was just fun and it was silly and we weren't seeing a lot of our friends, and I was just like, okay, well, YouTube will help me with something. And maybe next time we actually get to go to a wedding, I can do those dances, because it's not my forte, believe me. So I would just say, I'm not good at it yet. So this is a phrase that Carol Dweck uses. She's done an amazing amount of research in schools, just how we approach something with the students, whether they would do their best work, as if we just rewarded effort over the end product. So if you say, not yet, you're not quite there, but keep going, so you're rewarding effort. And same thing in our own career development. If we're looking, we're like, well, I'm not quite, I'm not a good dancer, believe me, but, I'm not there yet. Maybe I haven't written an NIH grant, I've written other grants, but I haven't written, not yet. So I'm saying like, I might not, but I might write an NIH grant someday. I'm not a full professor, not yet. Maybe I will be someday, but not yet. And that's fine, it's just where I am. So it's not saying I can never do it, and it's not really an excuse of why it's not done. It's just saying not yet. So if you're feeling kind of frustrated, you see somebody who already succeeded at something, just say not yet, I'm just not there quite yet. Especially if you think of like riding a bike or a little kid learning to walk. We never like, hey, why did you fall so many times with a little kid learning how to walk? You just encourage them, right? So we have to kind of go back to that mindset a little bit with keeping our professional well-being plan fresh and trying new things. You just want to say, no, I'm not quite there yet. But I'm going to try something new. We talked about the new colleague I just met, so we may do a wellness study together in MS. We haven't done it yet. We might do it. It's not yet completed. But it's a thought, and it's, the next step would be make a plan and try some things, right? Get out of the comfort zone. Now, I would say the people that tell us how to make a professional well-being plan, there's only one his name is Steve Berglass, and he's a psychiatrist. He talks about using anger to help you focus where to put your energy, and that was kind of a new concept to me, but I liked it a lot. Because there are definitely frustrating things in medicine. There's times where I just wish I had more opportunities for patients, or the medicines weren't so expensive, or the prior auths weren't so annoying. There's frustrating things. And so, one of his, he says, that's an opportunity to realize, again, what is really important to me. I don't like that inefficiency that that either I or someone on my team has to sit on the phone for so long for prior auths, etc. So that tension that we get, like, this isn't right, I want to see it differently. I mean, that's the time that you apply for PALF, AN, or do something, be active with the National MS Society or the patient advocacy groups, or get on a committee at work and see it change, so that, like, I don't like how things are yet, it's not perfect yet, but I would like to put some time or energy toward this, because this is driving me nuts. Like, I don't like to see this. And this is a way you might find your passion or your mission. So when people say, what are you passionate about? Sometimes like, I don't know, I'm a neurologist, or, I have 4 kids, I'm passionate about a lot, So, but if I can see, like, this really, I think this is inefficient care, this is not okay, then I'm willing to work on it. So listen to those feelings you have of anger and tension when you're in the clinic, and then look for resources to work toward that. That might give you an answer to what is really important to you. So I would say, start from the inside out. You know what you are, you know how you do things, but why do you do things? I hope you wrote down just a few words, maybe that come to mind. If you're super clear on this, all the better. You know why you do it, you get up in the morning, it's all good. That's awesome. It will help you develop this professional well-being plan. I would say, nature's very intentional. So even that sequence and that the ratio and the turn of the angle of the seeds, even in the center of the sunflower, it has that whole sequence that we talked about earlier. The exact same ratio, it's a 1.6 ratio, and that's to optimize the seeds getting released so that it can perpetuate. So, when we're developing our career well-being plan, we want to be really intentional about every action, because we don't want to waste any resources. The brain is amazing, you're doing amazing work. We just want to be able to understand why we're doing that amazing work, because it will help us get up in the morning, it'll help us be very clear about what to say yes or no to throughout the day. I love this quote by David Attenborough. It says, "An understanding of the natural world is a source of not only great curiosity, but great fulfillment." So if we understand and we can take our lessons from nature, we can be very clear about what we say yes or no to, and very clear about how we're going to develop our professional plan from here going forward by focusing on blooming and growing and balancing and flourishing for the long run. And we won't be those 37% of the folks who are just feeling really just emotionally kind of stuck or down. So please start with your why. Start with the inside out. It'll make life more clear. We can embody this natural pattern that's all around us. It's a great season of the year to go find, a field of sunflowers. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, so we actually have one near us that is planted in honor of a young teenager that died of cancer. So people go and take pictures with it and then have her name all over it. So I would be very intentional about every action that you take and know why you take even the slightest turn. So all of those turns and the angle of the seeds, there is a reason. It is to perpetuate life. So you want to perpetuate your why. Okay? And be very clear about that. Here's, if you want to take a picture of anyone, like the resources that I mentioned. Here's some of the books that I discussed. I also really, something that's on here is there's a book called Design Your Work Life. It's by 2 professors from Stanford. And they had so many students coming in asking them, like, I don't know what I want to be. Can you help me? They really walk you through a plan with that Design Your Work Life. And then the last one is a really wonderful story that really exemplifies what we talked about balancing and blooming and flourishing. It's called Flaming Hot. And it's a gentleman who was a janitor at Frito-Lay. And he was super just over the moon to get the job as a janitor at Frito-Lay because that was his first job that had benefits for him and his family, and all his extended family was just honored that he worked at that plant because it was a big plant in their town in California. And then he has this it's a great fun read, but the story is, I'll tell you the story. You can read it if you want. I highly recommend reading it. It's a fun read. But he was almost fired after 2 weeks because they said, you're not bringing me any ideas. Like you're doing fine, you're showing up, you're doing your work, but we want to hear your ideas. And he thought, oh, I didn't know you wanted to hear from me, So then he carried a notebook around and he jotted things and he saw, because he was cleaning all the machines, so he saw when they were wasting things or if a machine was down, how a line was shut down for a couple days. And so, and he, with his cultural background, he liked very spicy foods. My Irish self, I always say I'm in training with spicy food, but so he liked things hot, so he had certain flavors in his kitchen, and he noticed that they were throwing away plain Cheetos, buckets of plain Cheetos if they didn't need them. So he took them home and he would do taste tests of different Cheetos with really spicy seasonings on it, and there's great stories about him introducing hey, I made this new kind of Cheeto. And his boss was like, you did what? You took home product? You can't do it. But he did talk to eventually one boss that was like, yes, that's awesome. That's what I wanted you to do. I wanted you to come up with some good ideas. So he, by talking to the right person and taking some risks and getting out of his comfort zone, he's the guy who developed Flaming Hot Cheetos with his family. And now he's, of course, way up high in the company. And it's a great story about, number one, realizing your employer wants you to take risks and feeling safe in that environment to do so, and knowing the people that are safe to tell your big ideas to, and then taking a risk. And if you have an idea, it could be no one ever thought of that before. So I have a lot of my residents and fellows who think I want to do this in neurology, but I'm like, it hasn't been done. We need your fresh young eyes in neurology because you see things that we haven't seen. And this. Same thing with that story. It's a great story. Yeah, I highly recommend it. But thank you for your time and your attention, and I'm glad to take questions.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Are there any questions in the crowd? I don't necessarily have a question, but I'm, as I said before, I'm a fourth-year resident, and I think, over the course of the last 4 years, I've seen a lot of different wellness initiatives, throughout our residency program, and some work and some don't, but I really like your approach. It seems very individualized, you know, again, really focusing on your why. You know, what may work for me might not work for someone else, and so I really appreciate, again, just really looking kind of more at yourself and putting it a little bit on you to find what makes you happy, what makes you feel well. I think that's a great idea. That's great.
Yeah, glad you enjoyed it. I agree, and I think that we, you know, there's always people we can follow and think like, well, that's what an attending looks like. This is what a neuroimmunologist looks like. Like, no, you're going to be your own person growing up, and you know, professionally growing up. And it turns out we're always growing up, which is really great. And it's actually better for our neuroscience, right? So if it's better for our brain health and our brain reserve, if we're learning new things and trying new things. So that's yet another reason to keep up with new things. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.
Thank you.